I live in a world where there are no boundaries between here and the hereafter.
Berührt schon deine Tür.
Wow, it's quite busy. There's quite a lot of people.
How's it going, Dan?
Okay. I'm just like...
I'm taking into account that you provide a great speech in the spring during the Doku days. Yes, and it's very brilliant. So I would try to not to duplicate the questions. And,
I don't remember the questions and the answers, so go ahead, Esco. I am not recognizing.
But for Ukrainian audience, maybe it would be a better case to have something new. So it would be maybe a little bit personal about your experience, about your project. And I want to start how you started with virtual realities. Yeah, when was your first contact? As I read your biography, you were studying politology, so you probably imagine yourself as big politician, and then suddenly you go to TV, or not suddenly, but stereoscopic production.
Right. Well, that's a long story, but I try to make it short. I started in film industry when I was a young adult after school, when I finished school, and recognized that I'm interested in documentaries. And when I would consider myself as a filmmaker, I would consider myself more as a documentary filmmaker. And to be honest, I recognized some social issues in the film industry that I was not sure if I want to cope with that. And so it took me a while, about 2-3 years, that I recognized perhaps I should go to study after school as well, like everybody else does, and study what I'm interested in, and that is political science. So I went to university and did that. And of course, you don't only study political science, you go to philosophy courses, you go to sociology, you go to everything, a little bit of everything, you check it out. So, you know, and while doing that, I recognized that I'm constantly still working in the film industry to earn the money to pay my rent and so on. And that's easy as a freelancer, you know. So I recognized perhaps I should combine both things and go to Berlin to the film university and study film production here. So I have my political science background and then do something that helps me with the daily life when I'm working in that field. While recognizing that nobody, but a very low percentage of people who study political science really are politicians afterwards. Most of them are consultants in big companies or something, or they drive a taxi here in Germany, but very few are getting politicians. That's kind of part of the problem, sometimes people say. Perhaps more of them should go there than more people who understand politics are in politics. But anyway, that's another topic. So I went to Berlin and started my initial company I wanted to make something different, something I didn't want to make like classic commercials or like stuff. I wanted to do documentaries, but in a different way. And I did some research and somehow I went into stereoscopic 3D. And that's exactly how it started with VR as well for me. And that time it was about 5 years before Avatar came to the cinemas. So stereoscopic 3D was very niche. And even the digitalization of cameras and cinemas was not existing. It was still all on film. So it was a lot of research and development involved in there. So I came very early days in touch with the Fraunhofer Institute here in Berlin, or one of the Fraunhofer Institutes, the Heinrich Hertz Institute. And they did research on stereoscopic 3D workflows. And so they integrated me as a partner, as a small medium enterprise into their projects. And so I was lucky that I could work in stereoscopic 3D and get a stereographer and get knowledge about that. And then suddenly, it was very much at the end of my studies at the film university, they asked me if I would join as a partner into a project where they create a 360 camera, 360-degree camera. And I was like, wow, that sounds super interesting. And even more cameras involved and cables and, you know, stuff. So yeah, let's do that. It sounds like a good idea. So back in the days, the first test shoot we did was a 180-degree version of that. And then they further developed it into 360. And I was one of the partners who have been allowed to shoot with that camera system. And so that's how it started in a way, back in the days when I didn't even think that 360 video could be watched in VR headsets. It was more for dome projections and planetariums and, kind of installations in trade shows and stuff. And then I did a commercial with that camera, or an R&D commercial, industrial film, you could say, for Huawei in Shenzhen. And they recognized me as well as a stereoscopic specialist and someone who's into 360 video, and they got more and more connections to China. And at a film festival about, I don't know, 10 years ago, I met a guy who created these plastic boxes, these cardboards out of plastic. But he sold them as IMAX at home to watch stereoscopic films on that, not even VR. And I was like, guy, I heard about you can use these things for watching 360 video on your smartphone now, but they're not available in Germany at all. It was before the Google Cardboard came to the market and before Facebook bought Oculus and so on. So I bought a bunch of them and brought them to Germany and showed them to people, and everybody was like, how cool is that? Can we have some? And then I started importing these things and even importing them to UK and stuff. And yeah, that's how it started. Suddenly I was a guy who was importing plastic cardboards from China to the market and had always a viewer for VR content at hand, and who knew to create 360 video. And that was in the early days. And suddenly it went VR, and suddenly I was in the middle of the tsunami, and yeah, that's where I am now, right?
And do you still continue this hardware development of cameras?
That's part of our DNA. It's like we have in our company, we have 4 departments, or we consider it as 4 departments, same structure as with my initial company, Real Life Film International. So we do production and post-production. Meanwhile, the production department moved a little bit into the post-production department because we do so many things in Unity, for example. And the last 2 years, even less due to COVID, even less 360 video, because there was no shooting on location. We create much more things now in the office on a computer here, which was considered the post-production. So these 2 elements move together. Then the next department is a rental, where we rent out cameras, headsets, stuff. But the 4th department is the research and development department that we really consider as a department. And we write a lot of applications per year for different kind of research, mostly together with Fraunhofer institutes, not always, but mostly in different fields, because several reasons. One is we have creative ideas. We consider ourselves as creatives and not as engineers. But sometimes the tools are not there. And if you're working in a very new medium like VR, you constantly find things that are not available. And you think like, but that shouldn't be impossible. It's just not invented yet, or it's not on the market. And there are other people are working on that. So that's why we need, as creatives, to build our own tools. And why shouldn't we at least get a little bit of funds for doing that by doing these applications and just do it here in-house? That's why we do it. We love to do it in consortiums and do further research. That's one thing, but as well, from a business perspective, these projects are very long lasting. For a research project on volumetric capture, the application process already takes a year, and then it takes another half a year until the application went through all the commissioners and people who check that. And then you have suddenly, it's agreed, and then you have 3 years to do the research. So that I know already for a core team that I have to work for 3 years for this core team, So that keeps me a little bit off to make all kind of commercials all the time, just because I need my bills to get paid. Still, of course, I have to make sure that the jobs are there, but it gives me a little bit more of freedom and independency to, if there is a month, like if there's in December, nothing is happening, I know, guys, then we focus on the research and development much more. And it's all good, So it gives me a little bit of freedom in doing what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched portfolio, yes, the projects that were done in VR space, and I want to talk about them more. But you mentioned a commercial advertisement, and yeah, I want to close this topic. In your portfolios, there are some 360 videos as a commercial, and as I understand, it's very important from this. Yes, that it gives you resources to experiment and do some artistic project, and but this advertisement, they are I can see the last one represented on the website is from 2019. How is yes, this advertisement content for big companies now and during lockdown? On which platform did they represent it? What's the situation?
Yeah, I would say it's a difficult answer because you cannot really answer it just from one angle. So one thing is definitely in 2020 there was not so much happening. You couldn't shoot out there. All the budgets have been frozen. So 2020 there didn't happen too much on the one hand. Then another answer on that is as well that, of course, as said, like we are doing commercials. We are happy to do them, and if they are well paid, cool. If they push the boundaries, sometimes these clients, like automotive clients, sometimes push the boundaries as well because they need to show the hottest, newest stuff on the next trade show, on the next IAA or CES or whatever. So it always pushes boundaries, and they always have a budget for that. So that's fine. But as we are not doing cold acquisitions or running, we are not chasing them. If they want to work with us on a proper budget, fine. If they look for the cheapest one, I don't even send a quote. So because, you know, I have to pay my bills. I have to pay my guys here. We all want to have fun with our job and not constantly worry about if our bills get paid, and not even less when it's a big brand involved in that. So we are a little bit like shy to push it too much and say like, okay, we have some funded projects. We can focus on them and find that there is no commercial in between. Then again, 2020 took a lot of commercial work overall away. And then another thing here might be that, of course, 5 years ago, 360 video was the hottest stuff overall. And that's something like everybody understood, let's do a virtual test drive with our car or like these kind of things. But then they did it a couple of times and then it's not new anymore. So that's what happens constantly in this business, in the commercial field. If they do it for a year or for two, or the other brands did it already, it's not the newest, hottest thing anymore. And the whole circus is walking further, you know? And if you're not constantly aware of that, you're lost because you don't see that your clients already moved away before you recognize they moved away. And then it's just too late, you know? And that's exactly a game that we don't want to jump into. We never wanted to. We wanted to do a proper job on what we are able to do, and we are pushing the boundaries by research and development, and we know that commercial clients will come back to us when there's commercial work to do with some new technologies that we develop. But the stuff that we did in 2019 is stuff that happened in the window, in the time frame of 2016, 17, 18, 19, but then already went something where the most big brands said, okay, we did it already a couple of times, what's next? AR, you know, so they need something new constantly. It's like, I sometimes consider it's kind of being like a drug addicted, you know? They always want something new. If they have something, it's already old. It's like, you know, constantly they spend money and, you know, for me, it feels really bad like that. You're never satisfied with what you have, or if you have it, you perhaps for 10 minutes or one trade show, but then it's already old and the others use it as well. And so let's move something in. That's constantly, and if you're in that wheel, you're never getting satisfied. And that's why we say, they ask us if they want something from our portfolio, and if not, we have our creative work.
Yeah. Okay, then let's go to artistic project. Is it long durational in the term of effects and efforts, I consider. And my attention grabbed by, yes, so you have done different, but there are at least 3 projects connected with virtual reality and dance, and some choreography. Sublimation, terrain, and Das Totale Dance. In Ukraine recently there was also AR project with dance, and yes, they make some experiment. So could you share your process and ideas of VR and dance and body movement? And maybe some details about these projects.
Right. Yeah, where to start? I mean, we worked on, and that's perhaps the first answer as well to the answer before. Our website is not constantly maintained. It might have happened that we didn't put new projects on the website for a while now. So as you're just listing 3 dance projects, I recognize, oh, there might be some missing because we did a couple more, but that's 3 of them. Well, the thing is, people consider that VR is something that works very well with like theatrical stage play things and so on, which is true. It's not everything, but that's true. And there's a lot of dancers or performing artists who do something similar to dance, that are dancing on stages or doing the performance on stages, and they figured out VR as an interesting medium pretty early. So that's why it was for us always, perhaps that's not the reason, but it was for us always easy to find performers or artists, dance artists who have been interested in doing something in VR. That's one thing. The other thing is that music and dance is something that happens all over the world, in all cultures, in all ages, and so on. I mean, as long as you can move your legs, or even if you can't move your legs, you know, people dance. People are shaking their body to a rhythm and consider it as dance, whatever. It might be a ritual thing as well. It's not only like pop music or disco, dance, and rock and roll. It might be a very ritual thing. So we did, for example, a project on Africans in diaspora and all different places of the world. And of course, they have their rituals that a lot, and music takes a lot in these rituals. But of course, they are moving their body. I don't know if you would consider it as a dance or if you would consider it just as ritual movement or whatever. But I want to say, I mean, the answer would not be right to say it's easy to find dancers. That's why we did it. We are into it. We are interested in it. And you always learn something about culture, about music, about after the dance. No, after there is food, for example. Yeah, it has a lot to do with body and understanding your body, being body positive as well, or not, whatever. You know, it's like it's fun for us. I mean, it's not like we are doing another ego shooter game. It's something more, I don't know, it's sports, it's culture, it's something that I'm interested in. I don't know, perhaps it's personal.
Yeah, but if I'm right, sublimation about butoh dance, right? And butoh, as I speak with some of my friends who is doing butoh, this is that you have something inside, and viewers, they could feel this energy coming from the dancer, and yeah, it's impossible to represent in video format, but then you have it in VR. Did it work? I consider yes, because it was shown at Venice Biennale.
Yeah. Well, if it works or not, I think that's always a subjective thing. Everybody has to consider on their own if it worked for them or not. But yes, it was invited to Venice, so that's kind of a proof that it didn't not work at all. So it must be so, yeah. But I mean, that's a good thing in VR as well. It's a new medium, so there are some experiments allowed. Of course, there are some experiments that totally fail, and perhaps they will not be invited to Venice. But there's always a little bit of space for experimenting and letting the audience decide afterwards if it worked for them or not. So perhaps one thing is to make sure that the creative idea at least is a good one, that you try as hard as possible to make the creative idea work in a creative way. And then, of course, to add the technology on top of that, have a little bit of a feeling of what works in this technology and what makes sense in there. And that seems that we combined these three elements very well in this project. And I mean, we had a professional butoh dancer attached to this project, Yuko Kominami, who was brought as a friend from the directors from Luxembourg. It's not that I had the idea, and me not at all, to make some butoh and figure it out in VR, but they had the idea. And for me as a producer and CEO of my company, I had to feel like, well, that sounds like reasonable and an experiment that is worth to make. And yeah, for me, it worked out in the end. Of course, you always have constantly ideas how to improve next time and what next time should be changed or something. But generally spoken, it worked very well for me. And I would say it's one thing is that butoh is very, like most of the time, what I know from butoh is very slow movements. So you can do it after the butoh dancer and you can feel your body in that time, and still it's not like that you're shaking your head, no, constantly the headset is moving and you're always feeling you're in VR. So with this, there's a couple of elements in there that make it valid for VR, let's say like that. Yeah. Yeah.
I tried to find some trailer, some video of this project, and there is 30 seconds where you got intrigued.
I live in a world where there are no boundaries between here and the hereafter.
Did you show it in Venice and then some other places? So it's not available for now.
There should be videos. Oh no, it's not. It's not available publicly. We can share it, of course. That's something we never really did. We never really released projects from us in Oculus or in Liveboard for several reasons. Oculus, obviously, we didn't want to get Facebook 30% of the revenues. So that's more a political thing again, back to my political studies. And on the other hand, yeah, I don't know, we just moved on with other project and never released it. So if you are keen, or anybody who sees this is keen on seeing it, they should just shoot me an email and we'll figure out how and what kind of headset you have and what build you need. That shouldn't be a problem. There are videos there as well. I think they are not on YouTube. They are on our hard drives here and on mobile phones from people who shot it. We even had a live performance I don't know if you've been in Venice, but there on the island, there is it's an island with a building around it. In the inner circle, there's a yard. And on the first and on the second date, we had a live performance of Yuko Kominami in the inner yard doing her butoh dance with Kevin Moulin performing music. Kevin was the guy who was doing the music for that piece, for the VR experience as well. So there is even videos. There's a pre-documentary that we showed in the installation before you enter the VR piece. Then there is videos of people in that piece, and then there is a mix of Yuko performing outside, people in VR inside, and so on.
I'm glad to hear that you now doing in Berlin this Venice project screening.
Yeah, that's a satellite thing that we Venice was one of the first festivals that recognized they cannot have an installation on the island last year, and so they asked specific institutions to run a satellite venue. And so as satellite, we are running a rental here as well, and we are working a lot with festivals. So we have been we know the material and know how to set up a venue like this. And we've been able to find a venue here in Berlin with the Tempelhof Airport, which has huge buildings. So we had space there, we could bring the people in distance in there and so on. So yeah, that's how it was possible. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We did the same this year, kind of different, not at the airport anymore, but same but different.
I want to go to a more social project. For example, my identity is this expanse that is, according to video and description, social and also poetic.
Yes.
You were there also producer.
If I were another, I would have belonged to the road. Neither you nor I would return. And we might sense the unknown and the route that tempts the traveller to test gravity.
To be honest, we stepped out of this project a while ago for several reasons. One was that it's the same directors as Sublimations, and it's the same producer in Munich who worked on Sublimation. But the producer had to stop being a producer because she started a festival in Munich, and so the people handing out the funds in Munich told her that it's a wise decision to either be a producer of content or curate content. And so she had to make the decision to move on with the festival that she created for years now, and so on. So a very reasonable reason, but yeah, we just did this one project with the directors and said, like, if you're not too sad about it, we would let you go and do it with other partners, which is totally fine for us, because we are lacking a producer in Munich, and without a producer there, we cannot spend money in Munich, which is mandatory for the funds we receive. We have to spend it in that area where it comes from. And we had the feeling it's too much things that we have to organize now to fulfill our duties as a producing company, that we let it go then. And because we like this project so much, we didn't want to hold off or, you know, harm the project, and that's it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what is the percentage totally? It's about Hollywood that you could have ideas and scripts and filmings and editing, but in there is a big amount of films, and to the viewers there is only like 10% appears. What is the case for you with VR project? Because there are also some projects that in pre-production or in production for a couple of years. Is this amount of projects that is you start to work and then it's need more resources, or what are potential problems for project not to come to the viewer?
Well, that's manifold. I think it's hard to say what exactly is a problem for projects that do not come to the viewer. For us, it is like, I mean, that's what is my understanding from being a producer. Of course, you can be very focused on one project and then that finished to go to the next one. But that's normally not how it works as a producer in a company. You always have to jiggle with different projects. When you know the one is going to end, you already have the next one in the pipeline. You know, funding applications, they take you a month to work on and to send them until the deadline, but then it takes 3 months until you receive a decision. You can't wait for the decision, because if they do not accept the application, you are out of project. So you have to have something in between. So I didn't count it for 2020, but until 2019, we could count to be in charge of about 200 projects per year. 200 projects means like 1 project per day, which is a totally insane number. But this number only comes, is only existing because we always have projects in financing or in development. Then we have projects that are financed and pre-produced, further developed until ready for production. We have projects in production, we have projects in post-production, and we have projects in distribution. I wouldn't consider projects that are 3 years old as in distribution, wouldn't count them in, but some that really need some effort once a week, like an hour or 2 hours of someone here to talk to distributors, to talk to platforms where they are distributed, about revenue shares and so on, accounting, stuff like that. So then we had like a lot of live concerts, for example, that have only been daily shows, and each festival for a weekend is considered as one project for me. And that's how we came to count down to 200 projects. Only for that only reason, we always have a bunch of projects in pre-production or in financing where we don't even know if they will be financed. If they are financed, then of course we want to produce them. But I don't know how it works on your end or for the viewers where they are located. But here in Germany, it is like you can get a fund. And sometimes people say, and I don't want to be, I'm totally happy about each euro I receive in funds, don't get me wrong, but sometimes you get funds and you applied for, let's say, 50,000 euros, and they cut it down because of the amount of applications they receive to 30,000. So everybody can get a little bit, you know, but then you lack 20,000 euros. So you receive the fund, and at the same moment, you are not able to produce because you couldn't close your financing. You have to look for another 20,000, which means, okay, 3 months of waiting is over, but we are still in the same phase of writing a new application, waiting for, you know, like this. This can take years. And of course, in these kind of projects that take years, you can lose the momentum completely. You even, like, the director might leave the field of VR and move on with something else. Someone might get kids and focus on family for a while. I don't know. There's so many things. Companies around us file for bankruptcy, move their focus to more commercial work, co-productions, whatever. There's so manifold the reasons for why projects are not finished, but there's one reason why most of the projects that we finished are finished, and that is because we are aware that it takes time, that you can't push the things too much. And if it's a creative project where creative people put a lot of passion in there and energy, sometimes passion and energy is low. but you can push these people in that moment. You need to focus on something else and say like, okay, so we pause it for a while. If there's no deadline, let's pause it for a while and continue afterwards. Of course, always keep in mind that the momentum shouldn't get lost completely, and that it's always a risk that if one gets back with passion, says like, no, I'm back, the other ones might have no passion. So it's hard to balance this out, you know. But I learned the lesson, and perhaps it's only working for me, that at certain moments, you need just to move on with other things and leave some things a little bit for a while, and then you can touch them again. And perhaps you have totally fresh ideas, which sometimes is healthy as well. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you just say, oh, it's not finished. Let's just finish it and get rid of it now.
There is a project in cooperation with Rimini Protocol, Feast of Food.
Yeah.
As I understand, people coming to the table and they saw a few 360 video.
Yes.
This table and any other, so what is in the video and how this piece is constructed and how it was created?
Yeah, that's a nice project as well, because it's a very intelligent project, intelligent as well in terms of bringing people into VR who never encountered VR and perhaps had been a little bit restrictive. It was created initially by a group, an artist group here from Berlin called the Rimini Protokoll. They are always dealing with technology and coming from theater plays, but trying to do some with political impact, or at least creating discussions about the topic afterwards and so on. So here they had been asked to do something during the Bruegel year. Bruegel was an artist from, I think he's really from Belgium, not from Brussels, but from Belgium, Peter Bruegel, who created, let's say, paintings of landscapes connected to the topic of food, like I don't know, a group of farmers and their wives sitting in the fields with the straw and so on, like very like back in the days when you didn't have machines to do that, you know. So like these kind of scenarios where you can see how work on the countryside to produce our daily food looked like, and so they adapted these kind of how would you say it in English? I'm missing the word. In German, we would say Stillleben. So this glimpse into a scenario that could have been a picture, but it's painted into the modern world, like without any storytelling, no protagonists. They put the camera somewhere, and then it just happened there for a while. And so we moved to 6 different, anyway, to a couple of different places where they are what food production. One was the biggest slaughterhouse that you could find in Germany. One was the biggest food market in Europe, which is in Paris. One was the greenhouses in Spain, which is the biggest area for food producing in Germany with greenhouses, and in Europe. Then we have been at a chips fabric, at a chips manufacturing spot, so where they do these potato chips. So these kind of spots where they produce daily food that we recognize not even as animals anymore when it's just on our plate, but it has been animals, and just put the camera there. And yeah, the workers just worked as normal around it. And so when you put on the headset, so the headset had been placed on a medieval, really like it's a stitched Tischdecke, how would you say? It's not a towel. How would you call it? The blanket on a table blanket. And it was stitched by an artist here from Berlin that it looks really like medieval, like plates have been stitched in and fork and knife. And on the plate, we placed the VR headset with these 6 different shots. And so they could put on the headset and look for a while, for 5 minutes, how this kind of food is produced. And then they could decide on if they like the food or not, like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Another example for me, and direction, is a music video.
Mm-hmm.
You done Shook MC. I also can't find it any images from there, any examples. But what's your experience there and your thoughts? Also from militarity of this content, and and how good does it fit if we talk about dance, and I have this impression, yes, it is learning. And what about music video? How do you deal with it?
Right. Well, I mean, in the very early days already, it was a topic. Like a lot of musicians thought about why not putting a 360 camera here on stage, and then there could be an audience that didn't get a ticket or they couldn't come here to be here in virtual reality with me on stage. And of course, sometimes it works out a little bit, and sometimes it didn't work out at all because of resolution, or of course, you can't just put a camera on stage and then the people who look through it in VR have the feeling they're standing on stage. But it was the idea really. And so we played around with that a lot. And we did one music video, for example, with an artist here from Berlin, Friedrich Lichtenstein, who did a show on ARTE about gasoline stations. And so he had music about gasoline stations. And so the idea was to create, because ARTE was into 360 videos back in the day, so supported VR a little bit. And they said, why not making a music video out of this title song for this documentary series in his car that he's traveling Europe with and going to this different gas stations and drive from Berlin. And as we did so much with the automotive industry in the commercial field, it wasn't directly something for us. We just did like something we would normally do as a car commercial, like a virtual test drive with this guy on the wheel singing a song.
Mein Fuß berührt schon deine Tür. Ich fahr einmal um die Welt. Ich bin ein Held. Ich könnte noch 1000 Liter tanken, wär noch immer nicht am Ziel.
That was a fun thing, and like a lot of people said in the beginning, you can't move the camera in 360, that will make people sick. And we learned through these kind of things that it's not true. It needs a motivation, that people don't care about the movement, for example, or it's totally reasonable for them that it moves. And a car, for example, makes something reasonable to move. And in that case, for example, I don't know anybody who worried about the movement of the car, because everybody was looking at the artist who's singing to you and was totally flashed by this crazy guy singing crazy stuff and going with his golden Mercedes-Benz from, I don't know, 1980 to Berlin. So, but again, it's like, I mean, we are living in a world where music videos from MTV that have been like, I grew up with that stuff, and then suddenly you recognize the music industry has a big problem. And music videos are produced completely different nowadays than back in the days. And no label has money for that, or just very few labels have money for that. On the other side, there are creative musicians who just do it with their DSLR out there on the streets. And if they have a good idea, it's going viral. If not, it's just one of these other no budget music videos. So of course, we've been interested in playing around with creative guys, creative musicians on how might a music video work in VR in this new medium. Yeah.
How do you distribute this work where viewers watch this video?
Well, the Gasoline Deluxe one, I think it's on YouTube even. I think all the 360 videos from ARTE are more or less on YouTube as well. Then, of course, we sometimes, like in installations, we put like a bunch of headsets, and it's kind of somehow connected to the ticketing. So it's very different. It's very different because this medium, again, is so new that there is not really like distribution, the ways of distribution, how it works. There are some established ways, but it's all so new and all still in the process of being shaped that you cannot even say that Oculus is something manifested and that's the way it works, you know. And there's a lot of creative content that is censored by Oculus because it doesn't fit to their guidelines. So it's not distributed there. And that's why I would say there is not really a distribution chain established nowadays where you can say, regardless of my content, I can bring it to that platform, and either it's behind an age check, or it is, you know, like whatever, you know, from the internet. It's not existing in VR. Not now, not yet. You know. Mm-hmm. So music videos normally are on YouTube, I would say.
I also want to make sure to highlight the partners who made this possible, the partnership with INVR.SPACE, and also HTC Vive, Animation Nights New York, and me, Akmarat Tuliev, here in New York City.
Wow, it's quite busy. There's quite a lot of people.
How's it going, Dan?
Okay. I'm just like,
As I understand, your last project is a social VR platform. Yes, this is us XR. It's nice video. Yes, there is some avatars. Is it photogrammetry of the users or it's created? And there were a lot of people. What's your thoughts about this field of virtual meetings? Is it in which form, in which percentage does it? So why is this better than we have Zoom now, for example?
Well, there's again lots of answers. But again, funny-wise, the one that you just mentioned is again connected to music, because when we created this build of our platform is basically called Metaspace VR. But you will never find it under this name because we always create builds for our partners and then it's named by their partner's event. So we are not like the other platforms, not like Zoom or not like Engage or Spatial or however they called, where you can just download something on the store and then you can perhaps adjust a little bit or you buy a pro account or something like this. We are much more looking for working with big festivals because again, we worked with the festivals before the pandemic and we recognized how they struggled. And so this platform is just a solution for the festivals. But as we know the festivals, we know that they are all different. No festival is like the other. And it already starts with the venues. Most of them are located at a specific place in the world and they need this in their DNA. Like, for example, like where I live in Berlin, we have the Berlinale. And so Berlin is already part of the name of the festival. It is located in Berlin. And the place where they hand out the awards is called the Berlinale Palace. So even the venue is called after the whole thing. So you cannot just put like a random 3D environment there and say like, yeah, go ahead, make your festival in there. I put a cinema screen at the very end of the 3D asset. That's not going to work. You need like something that feels like being there a little bit. And then the other component of a festival is the social aspect. You need to communicate with people. And of course, you can have meetings like a scheduled Zoom call, but the most interesting thing is that you sometimes run into people that you wouldn't have met before, or that you met before and you wouldn't have thought about meeting them again. And that's something that happens in our platform a lot. For example, you watch experiences, again, like we create a VR platform, so you can watch even VR experiences, 6 degrees of freedom experiences in there, as well as 360 videos. But you don't have to look at on a VR headset. We create as well builds for Windows and Mac computers, for example. So it's very open for all kinds of audiences. Of course, someone who goes into the platform with a computer will not be able to go into the 6 degrees of freedom VR experiences. They are connected to VR headsets only. But you can go in there and make the social experience, which means you run into people and you talk to them and you recognize them by their avatar. There's a lot of improvements, of course, for the next years, a lot of ideas. Like to answer your question of the avatars, they are not photogrammetized or scanned. It's just like avatars we created here in our 3D software. We could do that, but it adds a lot of effort, which means a little bit more budget, of course, but as well on the technical side, it's much more complicated to have them in there. And if they are not done properly, that adds this uncanny valley effect. So a not good photogrammetized avatar is much worse than a 3D avatar that looks like 3D, you know? So the one that you just mentioned, This Is Us, is a band that the Austrian Chamber Culture, whatever, don't get me, whatever, they asked to have a premiere or a release party for the new album of these guys, but they've been located in New York. So nobody could go there. They couldn't go to Austria because of the pandemic. So we looked for this solution and we tracked their hands so that you can see still the movement and the guys are playing the guitar or the saxophone or stuff like this. So we connected it really to the musicians and the music was, and the performance was part of the happening in there. but as well, people could go to another corner and just talk there and come back. And as long as it's happening on a street crossing in Manhattan, you still have to think, oh, I see the stage over there. It's not like we are leaving the Zoom room now to another room to talk a little bit more silent and the others don't listen to us. You're like in reality, you move a little bit away from the others and then you talk there while the rest of the party is still there, but you have an eye on that and see when the band stop playing, and perhaps you see another name, say, hey, I know this guy, I want to talk to him. So it's a little bit like, it's what, I mean, Facebook is considering the word of the metaverse, or many people are talking about the metaverse. That's exactly what we created with this platform a while ago already, but we don't consider it as a metaverse. We consider it more as a social festival platform that you can use for other purposes as well, of course, but that gives this, I've been flying to festivals all over the world, and sometimes I ask myself, does it make sense to be here for a day and fly like half over the globe? Doesn't make sense at all, not in an ecological way, but economic wise as well. Not, I mean, you pay money, they spend money on a hotel and stuff for having the person one day there. Could easily join like this in a Zoom call, but a Zoom call is super annoying after a while, and just having people, like selected people in a 2D vision, is a different thing than to walk through the venue and run into someone you didn't know that he's there, you know, while having all the functionalities that you have in a Zoom call as well. You can talk to each other, you can even use a text chat. So all these functionalities are there. And on top, you can even visit specific contents in there that you can't visit in a Zoom call while we are speaking to each other. Yeah.
Yeah. As I understand, you are also teaching in some universities. Yes, and is there any this new ideas? Does it come from the practice field, or universities also the places where you teach this new generation of students, which have this internet and mobiles from their very, very young? Do they have some? Do they bring some bright ideas, and is universities a place for research and development?
What exactly the beginning of the question again? The ending.
Yes, you have experience of teaching, and so I consider in some fundamental science, this academia as the avant-garde of the research and development of the field, but is it the same? And for film, for example, you have individual artists or big companies that are experimenting and doing a lot. And for virtual realities, is it more this artist private companies driven, or academia also have some efforts in pushing this situation?
Yeah, no, I understand the question. Now academia is pushing it in a way, but it's very, like, some do, some don't. And you already mentioned, like, the young artists, the next generation of filmmakers and so on, very, very slow. I mean, there are some film universities here in Germany where the professors, for example, they recognize, oh, there's the new medium, we shouldn't skip this one. We should focus on that as well, or we should at least recognize it and see if that adds something. But that's mostly the university, for example, that already dealt with VFX and a little bit more into the game direction, because they've been more open-minded. Other film schools say that doesn't have anything to do with film, or if there's 360 video, okay, let the students do that, but they don't focus, they don't establish classes for that, for example, because they don't understand that, they understand that cinema is still there since more than 100 years, and TV is still here as well, so they consider it'll be mediums that'll exist, and so we don't have to move away from that, and we don't have to jump on the next newest medium, which is totally fine. But of course, sometimes it would make sense to recognize as well that the radio has been before cinema, and that there's constantly a development, and it's not like we are against cinema or we are taking over. All these mediums will stay there, but it's another medium that deals with audiovisual files in a way, And if you educate people in dealing with audiovisual files and train them how to immerse an audience into your storytelling, it might not be wrong to have a look in this other medium, either to say, okay, it's not the right medium for my film, or to consider that perhaps is a much more immersive medium and it makes total sense to go in there, while you couldn't have told it on a big cinema screen. You never know. For that, you have to experience it and figure it out, which sometimes is missing in university. I mean, of course, they have their curriculums, they have their like timelines, they structure the classes years ahead, they have a budget from the government, so they have to stick to some things, you know. So it's not that easy to decide from one year to another. But now we are since 8, 9, 10 years again in this wave of new VR technology. And I think we can consider it's not going to go away anymore, or only with a big bang. I mean, Facebook is putting so much effort in there. Now TikTok bought a Pico, another headset manufacturer. So I have the feeling it's more and more getting established rather than going away again. Yeah, I think it would be not a stupid decision to implement it more in film schools, as they implemented at a certain moment VFX as well, which was considered as something not needed in, like the Berliner Schule is very much black and white film in a chamber, having discussions with yourself, is a style, but perhaps not for everybody. And so all of them might have place. But to answer from the other direction, there is academia as well. Universities don't have to deal at all with film making, that are of course tackling this question as well, like asking about the social relevance or the social impact of VR. Can you cure people with PTSD with VR? There's so many educational apps already in VR. Most of them have been created in collaboration or cooperation with universities. So there's a lot of focus on that, but of course, not at all as much as on cinema and so on yet. Yeah.
And my last question. There is a project 6 years ago. Its title is Future of VR. It's interactive documentary 2015 with a big star of this field. And from the description, they say something about future of VR. So now from 6 years. How does it fit the reality?
That's a very good question. As you say, it's 6 years ago. So I must admit, I didn't watch it for a while. The only thing that I watch constantly is funny-wise, the background you're seeing here is from that documentary. Because we captured these guys at the FMX in Stuttgart, and it wasn't the days when you put like GoPro cameras into a 3D printed rig to have 6 of them in a wall, you know. And we decided that doesn't make sense and we want to have it stereoscopic, because I came from being a stereographer. So we just took a stereoscopic camera and shot them sitting on the benches that you could see in the background. And then we merged, we stitched all these images together. That's why you see, you know, it's over here a little bit of a blur, since that's where we stitched the inner part with something from outside that was in the background. So we helped ourselves with just putting it together and that it works. That's the technical and the creative approach that we did there. But I must admit, and that's what I remember, I cannot say if this person or that person exactly said this or that sentence. But I know that what I remember is that some predictions have been right. Like there's a huge development, development driven by companies, by big companies, like, for example, Facebook and Sony and HTC and so on. There is a market that was not existing back in the days, and that was one estimate, that the market must be much more established, otherwise it would not be there anymore. So that's reality. But a lot of predictions have not been fulfilled, and I think, for example, we still have like glasses and we have headsets, and there's a huge difference. You know, you'll still see that, and some people predicted at least for the next 10 years that VR headsets will look like this. I think we are getting closer to that, but we are still far away. So yeah, it's again, like if you ask people for their predictions for the next 6, 7, 10 years, some things are right, some things are wrong. And I'm happy that the worst case scenarios are not proven as right, but more the best case scenarios, that it's still existing and that we are dealing with it with a lot of creative people right now, and not only business driven, that's all. Yeah.